and I think I've given it long enough. We should be live now. Yeah, there we go. Still haven't had the notification to say I'm live, but I've realised that it comes up very late compared to when we actually go live, so I'm going to assume we're live now. Right on time as the stream, about 6 minutes late. Sorry about that. Was busy right up until I had to start the stream, so that's completely my fault. But luckily we're here just in time to see the start of the session. Looks like one of the Mercedes very eager to get out on track. I think that is of Jim. So let's see. No, there's actually going to be someone get towards the end of the pit lane first. We'll just wait and see who it says is on their out first. It is Rudy. Rudy, the first car out on track in the Williams. So as usual, just going to turn it all on, so you can just get a general idea of what's going on in the session, and then we're going to hide all that. So, Hungary. It's quite a... I don't know. I feel like it's quite a split track among a lot of the league racing community. A lot of guys really like it. A lot of guys don't so much. Personally, I'm in the group of people who really like this track. I've never had much luck here in terms of my own league racing, but I do enjoy driving this track. It's a fun track to drive. Punishes mistakes quite harshly, but it's not with a barrier like somewhere like Monaco. Of course, the nickname for this track is Monaco without the barriers, as we are prepared to start a lap here with Rudy. But yeah, I feel like it provides a good challenge while not being too harsh on the driver. It's just generally fun. Obviously, overtaking is quite difficult, but as you'll come up to see, turn one here, very nice, very easy to get a good dive bomb going. As Rudy uses a lot of the inside curve there. I think usually that hurts your traction a bit, but it doesn't seem like he's too worried about that. It coming down into turn 2 now, very tight, and he's going to use all of the exit room he can to carry that momentum as much as he can through turn 3 now, not worrying about how tight that line is. Turn 4, bit of a lift in there and a downshift down to 7th gear. Turn 4 is one of the corners that you want to take it as fast as you can without running wide. Obviously, the faster you take it in these cars, the more downforce and grip you're going to have, but you take it too fast, and obviously with how wide these cars are, you're going to inevitably run off the track. The middle sector there, quite a twisty section, really where the higher downforce section of this track comes in. As we now come through the final couple of turns, he's going to come into the hairpin, and he's going to use all of that room on the right before coming back over to the left, and now taking a very narrow line into the final corner. He's going to use as much exit as he can without running too wide. You do find that curve unsettles the car quite a bit, and he goes and sets the first time, which is a 13.2 here on softs, and Dawidek with a 13.4 also on the softs, and Jim with a 13.8 on the softs. Behind them is the Ferrari of Sculzi's on an outlap, and then it is Mersault who's going to cross the line of 14.4, so that puts him P4 for now, and then the McLaren starts a lap behind. There's going to be, I think that's Rally coming into the pits. No, that's his teammate Stel Repas who comes into the pits there. Next across the line will be Joe, so Joe going 5th with a 14.9. Is to be followed over the line Jonas with a 13.5, put in 3rd place for now. Going to come up next is one of the Red Bulls, it's Harm going P2, 13.3, and just showing how close the grid is at the moment. The other house of Jonah going to cross the line now. It's been very solid so far this season, but it's only good enough for the 3rd row at the moment. P5, 13.6, just further showing how close these guys are, 1/10 separating each person here. As now the Red Bull of Chiquita looks to start a lap, followed by Sculzi. In fact, this pole house on an invalid lap, and the AlphaTauri there, I believe, is Dawidek pitting. So I think the next car to cross the line on a lap is going to be maybe Bread, who's actually invalidated his lap, so won't complete the lap. I'm interested to see if a lot of these guys who have invalidated laps choose to go out later on again and maybe risk the medium tyre, because obviously the strategy here is another one of those tracks just like as we saw in France, where that's just slightly wide there from Chiquito, very unlucky, using a bit too much curb, invalidates his lap. It's one of those tracks where the strategy is quite difficult. Of course you want that one stop, but it's quite hard to do from the softs into the hards. The preferred strategy is from the mediums to the hards. So if you can qualify top 10 on a set of mediums, you're in absolutely perfect position. And if you qualify outside the top 10, probably recommend the hard tyre to you if you want the better strategy, if you can keep with the group, which is a bit harder to do here admittedly than it is at France. Still not impossible, as we know F1 2020 as a game generally struggles from the DRS train issue. So of course it's never impossible, as Polehouse comes to complete his second lap on these sides and across the line, it's going to be a 16.8. So that's the slowest time so far, puts him P10, and I'm sure there was some kind of issue on that lap that it wasn't the best he can do. Right, let's see who's actually out on track. We have Dresser and Tech who's on track. I think Tech coming just through the final sector there. Yeah, coming through the final corner now. He's going to keep tight to that. Running through the exit. It's going to cross the line as a 15.8. It's only good enough for 10th place, but he is on the mediums, keep in mind. So that medium tyre, he is the first driver to attempt a lap on the mediums, and it's put him in the top 10 for now, but I have a feeling once Dresser crosses the line, he will be knocked out of that top 10. It's looking like a very good lap so far from Dresser. Bit of snap of oversteer there as he comes through the penultimate corner, but it's not affected him too badly, I don't think, as he comes out the final corner using all the width he can. He actually runs over to the right. Very strange to run over to the right, as it actually increases the distance to the line, but P4 nonetheless with a 13.5, just under a tenth away from his teammate P3. Very strong qualifying session from AlphaTauri so far. He's got Stel Repass here on his own lap as he comes through the middle sector split with a 52.6. Not too bad as he now navigates the final couple of corners. It's just going to come a bit wide, but he's going to go for the late apex. And overall, I don't think it's too bad, despite the small lock-up. It might be a bit desync, of course, but he does miss the apex for the final corner there. He didn't quite get the car turned in enough. 13.9 puts him P8, just ahead of his teammate Rally there, so I'm sure he's got more to find there. As we saw, there was the lock up into the penultimate corner, didn't quite hit the apex of the final corner, so there is more to come from Stel Repass, I'm sure, as we actually see Rudy out on another lap, so it's right on board with him once again. He's actually invalidated here, so no improvement from him yet. As let's stream. I've just seen the comments, so I will be. There we go. So have a look at what Dawidek's doing. He's just behind Polehouse here. Hopefully Polehouse doesn't get in his way at all. It said there was a comment, but I can't see it unfortunately. I think chat's broken a bit, so I'm sure it'll pop up at some point, but sorry if I don't read that out straight away. It's going to be a 13.1 from Dawidek, crosses the line at his provisional pole position, 2.5 tenths improvement. What a great way to start his session. Obviously it's his middle lap now as we come past the 10-minute mark, so he will only have one more lap left in this session. Maybe another one if he's pretty rapid with this in lap, and overall his next couple of laps are a bit rapid. But there is a small chance. In fact, I would bank on Rudy doing 2 more laps in this session, since he has abandoned one of his laps, which totally opens up the possibility of doing 4 total laps. So keep an eye on Rudy. He might go for a surprise late run. Running on board with Harm now, who's looking fairly solid through the final sector here. He's just maybe a bit too much drain there. He's using a bit of company outside. He's actually going into the pit, so not happy with his lap. Obviously the Delta telling him that he's a bit too far behind to make up the time he needs to the final corner. His teammate, however, Chiquito, yet to set a lap, abandons his lap, so he'll remain without a lap in this session as it stands, and I'm sure Dawidek there coming into the pits. We're going to have one of the 2, I think it's Jonah. Yeah, Jonah just coming through the penultimate corner here. Let's see what he does. No, he pits as well, so not many people looking too happy with their middle runs here. The only person with a real improvement so far is Dawidek, so yeah, he can be quite pleased with that one, because obviously he's got another run to improve on that, whereas the pressure's going to be on the rest of the field a little bit as they come into their final runs to be able to get that run done without messing up and invalidating, because they didn't get a middle run in so far. Jonas, ooh, as he spins, and he's out of the session. His wheel comes off, and that's him completely out of the session, so he will not improve. He will not progress any further in this qualifying session. That is such a shame. Just cut on board with him just to see him, unfortunately, get the power on a little bit too early, lose the back end, and just really a passenger as he headed towards the wall there. Very unlucky there as we watch Rudy start another lap. Let's see if we can ride on board and maybe point out a few things that he's doing better than his previous lap. Hopefully not getting too much traffic on this lap. He does have a racing point just ahead of him coming out of the pits though. Not using the curb of turn 1, I personally think that's better. He didn't quite hit the apex though. Using the curb on the entrance to turn 2, and then he's going to fall away from the apex of turn 2 as you get wider and wider through the corner. You want to really carry that momentum. It's especially important on the PS4 version of the game to carry the momentum, and he's taken that much faster. As you can see, he just had so much more grip than he did last time. Last time he braked more, you went a bit slower, and it looked like he had less grip than this time where he carried more speed, just proving what I was saying earlier really. But all about carrying as much momentum as you can through the corner. As Tao Piz sets the fastest lap, it's a 1:13.177, only 100th quicker than Dowdek before. And there's a small improvement going on here for Rudy too. If he can find what he needs in the final sector, he could definitely challenge for that provisional pole. He's only half a tenth down so far, and you can see through that penultimate corner as well. You come in, you apex early, and you fall away from the corner as your apex in a way to keep that momentum going. As he crossed the line, it's a 13.126, so he improves by just over a tenth, and that does put him back on provisional pole, and leaving us with a very tasty looking final part to this qualifying session. Just going to ride on board with Stel Repass, of course, the racing point that you saw get out of the way of Rudy just now, so he's on his own lap. So is Polehouse and Chiquito. Polehouse slightly further up the road. I think that's actually him coming towards the end of his lap, so we will just watch him across the line. He's much further up, he's looking much more comfortable, just about not invalidating there, and he crosses the line, goes P7 with a 13.655. So good stuff there from Polehouse. Who was I looking at before? Stel Repass, there he is, as he comes through the middle sector now. The S section, probably one of the hardest to get, because you really have to choose your gears right and carry that momentum, as I was saying before. As you switch directions, it's quite tricky, and really you have to build your setup with that in mind. Even though you have the long straight and you have the hairpins and traction zones through the first and final sector, you do have to keep in mind that middle sector, as there's a small touch on the grass and a lock up as a result there from Stel Repass. Looks like it's been a mistake from Dowdek, and he's out of this session, as there's about a 10.5 improvement there from Stel Repass, moves up to P10 just behind his teammate. And we're going to move over to Chiquito here, just coming through the final corner now. One of only 2 drivers not to set a lap time yet in this session. You can see him now as he comes up, opens up the Aero, across the lights, will be a 13.4, putting in P5, right behind his teammate once again. We're seeing a lot of 2x2s with teammates so far in this session, despite it being equal performance. So maybe showing that the matchups between teammates here is quite decent. And of course, the only driver to not yet set a time is Bread, who looks like he's just coming out of his pit box now. So yeah, it is him. So we'll keep an eye on that. Just see that he's on the medium tyre, so interesting to keep note of that. One of the only drivers, except for Tech Racing here, that took the suggestion that I mentioned earlier of starting on that medium tyre and don't do that, and trying to see if you can use it to your advantage strategy-wise in the race. As to be honest, just like France, P11 really isn't a bad place to qualify on this track, as you get that strategic advantage. Just seeing who else is on track. Of course, Stel Repass is going to be coming in. In fact, he looks like he's having an issue. He's driven into the pit entry there. Okay, and Salt here, just slightly improving. Actually, no, he's down through the sector 1 split. Looking like he's struggling a bit on overall grip. He's just not quite able to get the power down as he wants so far. So It's not looking great for him so far, as we have Jim abandoning his lap, Chiquito abandoning his lap, and of course Salt not doing too well. We're going to go back on board with Tech. He is invalidated, so he will not be improving. So that medium time will probably be the best unless he can abandon and get back out on track quick enough. He might just about have enough time. It's going to be very close though. Just watching now, Salt, is he going to go for another lap? He doesn't really have the time to pit and come back out. He's going to choose to pit anyway. So we're going to have to see what's going on with him, and we no longer have anyone on a flying lap. They're all on out laps. But we do now have Bread starting his laps. We will ride on board with him, because he's the only driver on a flying lap right now, as he brakes just between the 150 metre mark and a small lock up on the inside, but he just nicely kisses the apex of the curb, not using any of the curb, but just gets the car nice and turned into the used entry curb, and again very tight here before accelerating out of the corner, trying to carry that momentum as he can through the exit. Now coming up to the tricky turn 4. He's just a one downshift there and take as much as he could on the throttle, but he invalidates in the exit of turn 5, just using a little bit too much of that curb, and unfortunately that looks like it might be a session over unless he's fueled up enough for 2 laps. Hard to say, but we'll have to see if he decides to pit or not at the end of this, to see who else is coming towards the end of their outlap. Jonah coming towards the end of his outlap, so we'll have to keep an eye on him. Actually, Polehouse starting a lap now, so we'll run board Polehouse, see what he can do with his final run in this session from P9. Again, just kissing the apex very nicely there. Few lightweights. And again for turn 2, very tight, just keeping that car moving through the corner, and as he moves up to turn 4, very nice there as he cuts it as much as he can, just using a little bit of the exit curb. Very nice. He understeers a bit through turn 5, but saves it quite nicely. I don't think he would have lost too much time, maybe a tenth or so. Using that first sausage curb, it's going to slow you down quite a bit as he abandons his lap now. Yeah, as I was saying, I think last time here, I wouldn't use the first sausage curb there. It's quite unstable, but I would, if you can get the line straight enough, might be worth using the second sausage curb in order to keep the car travelling in a straight direction. Of course, travelling in a straight direction helps out with your traction, and so overall helps you on your lap. As actually, I think Bread has gone for a second lap here, and it's going much better. 52.7 through the middle sector. So we're just going to watch the final sector here. Small lock-up, well, quite a large lock-up actually, into the penultimate corner here as we come into the final corner. Slowing the car down quite unnaturally actually. That was quite hard on the brakes, but as he crosses the line it's a 14.2, which is only good enough for 15th place. And he'll probably be quite disappointed with that one overall. To not, well, I don't know, while he is starting outside the top 10, which is a bit of an advantage, but maybe not quite as high up the top, the outside of the top 10 that he would have liked. And I don't know, targeting that 13.6 really would have been a bit of an ask, I think. 6/10 on that medium tyre, but Tao Piz absolutely flying in this session. 12.8, fastest lap of the session out of Rudy's 13.0, so Dowdek down to 3rd, Harm 4th place still, but Jim invalidated here, so he will not improve. Chiquito, however, going to finish the lap. Where's it going to put him? It's not an improvement, so P6 only, and Polehouse finally moved himself back up to P9 alongside his teammate Scoolsy, so double top 10 for Ferrari there. I'm sure they'll take that this weekend in real life. And there it is, the final starting order for today's race. We have Tao Piz on pole. He's nearly 2/10 clear of Rudy, starting in 2nd. Dowdek 3rd with Harm in 4th and Jim in 5th. Chiquito 6th for Red Bull. with Dresser in 7th, Scully 8th, followed by his teammates Polhouse in 9th, Jonas in 10th, and with a free choice of tyres we have Rally, Jonah, Stel Repas, Salt, Joe, Tech and Bread starting in last place. But I think quite a mix compared to what we normally see here. A few names up there where we wouldn't usually expect them, a few names a little bit further down than we would expect them to be, so could be on for quite an interesting race. Of course, Hungary not the easiest track to overtake, but it's definitely possible, and if you get the right strategy you can gain a lot here. And of course, as we saw in qualifying, prone to a couple of crashes as well, so maybe a safety car can spice things up from time to time. We'll just have to wait and see. Just waiting on everyone to sort their setups out, sort their strategy out. Going to be quite an interesting strategy, see who's doing what so far this race. He'll probably tell us on the formation lap anyway. So yeah, it'll be quite nice to see who's going to go for what maybe a couple of different strategies. Maybe someone's going to try and go more aggressive for an undercut, or maybe even a two-stop. I doubt it, but there might be a two-stop somewhere in this field. So we'll just have to keep our eye out for it as we get away for the formation lap. And I'm just going to turn on the tyres. As you can see, everyone outside the top 10, either the mediums or the hards, as I said. Of course, everyone's inside the top 10 is on softs. 2 hard tyre runners, Jonah and Bread, the rest on mediums. And we're going to head to the interview lounge for this formation lap to see what everyone is saying. Quite a lot, considering that it was only done today. So the questions for this week. Question number 1, what do you think of this track, as usual? Question 2, who will finish on the podium? Question 3, what will the pole time be? Question 4, will you be getting the deluxe edition of F1 2021 for the extra My Team content? Question 5, who will win the Monaco Grand Prix this weekend? And question 6, what is the worst F1 livery of all time? That's in contrast to last week's, what is the best livery of all time. Jonas was the first to answer. He said that the track is really good to drive, but it's annoying that it's so hard to overtake. He thinks the podium will be Bread, Chiquito and Rudy. Bread's got a long way to go if he wants to get on the podium. And Rudy is in P2 of course, Chiquito down in P6 though, so maybe not. I don't know. Something crazy's got to happen if you want to see that podium, I think. He says the pole time's going to be a 12.8. I think he was pretty much spot on. I think it was a 12.8. He thinks that he won't get the deluxe edition. He thinks Verstappen will win this weekend, and that this year's Ferrari livery is the worst F1 livery of all time. I don't think I agree with that. It's not the best livery they've ever had on the Ferrari, but I wouldn't say it's the worst livery of all time. But here we have the grid formed up, so let's move away from that. Wait for the lights to come on so we can get a better camera angle, of course. There we go. As 4 and 5 red lights, and we are away here in Hungary. It looks like it's been a good start there for Piz, good initial launch, and also there for the AlphaTauri. Quickly gets covered off by Rudy as the 2 Red Bulls jostle for position down to Thomas. A huge move there across from Harm. Maybe to cover off Jim behind, maybe not, but either way it was quite a large move. And we already have a glitch, which is really annoying, saying that Polhouse and Rally are leading the races. There's a huge crash in the back, and it looks like Scully is out of the race, and one of the AlphaTauris has spun around. I think it's Dresser. Dresser and Jonas have come together, and Scully out of the race then, as we have a full safety car here on lap 1. And I don't Ooh, I think most of the, I would say most of the soft runners are going to convert to a two-stop now. Medium to the end would be my guess. Medium runners will probably have to stick on their current tyres, and hard runners will definitely have to stick on their current tyres. But as we said there's a high chance of a safety car here, and we already got one. So just looking for damage. Jonas has damage. Dresser, does he have any damage? I know he was facing the wrong way. It looks like he does. Maybe. No, he doesn't. Okay. Still, Repass definitely has damage. Joe, no damage. Bread, no damage. Rally, no damage. Jim doesn't look like he has damage. I'm pretty sure that was his tiny little end plate there. As we do have cars into the pits, including Jim here. So we have one of the medium runners into the pits, strangely, but we have 4 cars deciding to pit here on lap 1. A lot of the soft tyre runners deciding to stay out. And I guess they're just going to try and extend their soft stint a bit, maybe. I don't know, maybe they'll just pit on the same lap that they did and were planning to anyway. I've seen that a few times this season, but maybe they'll extend their soft stint by about a lap before going onto the hards, just to make that hard tyre stint a little bit easier. But I kind of feel like they're putting themselves under pressure a bit by not pitting, because you've got all of these guys on mediums and hards which are going to be better in a few laps time anyway. I mean, you're going to, obviously not much wear, but you're going to get some wear behind the safety car. And your tyres are just going to degrade, and eventually you'll find yourself under pressure from these hard and medium runs, especially Jonah already up there in P5 on the hard tyre, and you have Bread P8 already on the hard tyre, and then Tech and Rally P6 and 7 medium tyres, Joe P9. You just got to kind of think that it's a bit of a risk for these soft tyre runners, because yeah, they'll get an undercut obviously through pitting earlier because they're on the softer compound tyre that wears out earlier, but they're not really giving themselves enough time to create the gap that they need to make this strategy work. They're going to get caught in a lot of traffic, and I kind of think that maybe the guy, we've had some guys pit on lap 1 for the hards, and that was quite risky. They're definitely at a big risk of a puncture there, as we're waiting on the last couple of guys to catch up to the back of the field, so the safety car of course will do another lap. Should be in at the end of lap, well, if it sorts itself out, lap 2. It says lap 3. I'm pretty sure this is yeah, this is actually lap 3. I think it has actually fixed itself because of the safety car. So safety car should be in at the end of this lap. The whole field is now bunched up, so hopefully it doesn't keep us out unnecessarily long. And of course, unlucky to Scorsy. Would like to see what went on there. It looked kind of crazy, but yeah, just really unlucky to only last 3 corners today. It's about as long as yeah, just not really wanting to last only 3 corners, are you? But while we're here, we'll move on to Chiquito's answers to the interviews. So he says that Hungary is one of his favourite tracks in the game. No need to overtake here, it's fun anyway. Well, usually races do require overtaking. That's generally how racing works, but you do you. He thinks the podium will be Bread, Harm and Talpiz. Talpiz and Harm both already there. Bread's down in P8, but with a strategic advantage, maybe. Maybe. He thinks the pole time will be a 1:12.9. He wasn't far off. He doesn't think he's going to get the deluxe edition. He thinks Mazepin's going to win. And he says the 2014 Caterham was the worst livery he's ever seen. It's got to be the ugliest car I've ever seen, with the long nose that was just odd, like alien nose. But the livery was alright. It was a green. It wasn't the ugliest green, but the safety car is now into the pit, so it will be up to Talpiz when we go. And he's just coming through the final corner, not doing the traditional thing of going just before the final corner, so we're mixing it up a bit for once. He hasn't got too far to run to the line as he goes straight out of the exit of the corner, straight away gone, and everyone tucking into his slipstream over on the right. We actually have Chiquito very close, maybe going to go for a move on the outside to turn 1. We also have Jonah down the inside of Tech into turn 1 as Chiquito gets pushed out wide. It's going to put him under pressure here from Jonah. Jonah maybe making up 2 positions on this restart. Not quite looking like he's going to be able to get it round the outside though, and luckily for him, Tech didn't quite get the run on him into turn 3, so he's able to keep that P5 for now. As we look at the order, just monitoring the gaps very closely through the middle sector. Of course, not really much chance of an overtake coming down into the middle sector, so that would be a bit of a surprise if we were to see one. But we'll just have to wait and see. And now coming into the final sector again, unlikely we'll see an overtake, but no DRS enabled yet, so maybe into turn 1 if someone decides to use all of their ERS. It might be Chiquito here. Dowdek looking like he had a poor run there. Chiquito right on his tail already. Maybe just unable to hold it quite as close as he'd like for the final corner though, and just dropping a bit too far back to really make anything work, as we now have a move here. Dresser looking up the inside of Bread, of course Dresser on soft tyres. Bread trying to hold it around the outside, doesn't look like it's going to work out for him though. Wasn't really very significantly alongside, and an ALR, that's not going to work out well for you. But Rally leaves the session. Rally has disconnected, so he's going to immediately start tumbling down the order. Going to be ghosting, so cars will just drive through him, as we see there with Bread coming through him. Now Joe's going to come through him, most likely. Yeah, there we go. And Rudy's going to be next, so yeah, just that's horrible stuff for Rally to disconnect right there and then, as we have Jonas making the move on Stella Repass over what is 15th place. Of course, not wanting to be last, as Rally tumbling down the order now. Hopefully someone can get him an invite, because this is just horrible stuff for the Racing Point driver. Let's look, we have a fairly close gap here between Dresser and Tech. Tech's looking like he might be struggling a bit ever since this restart, as now the pit window for the hard tyres opens. So that's what I was saying before, these soft runners are really maybe regretting their decision not to pit on lap 1, because they haven't pulled any kind of significant gap. It's only 1.4 seconds, and then they're going to have to pit, and they're going to go all the way to the back of the grid and have to fight their way through. And because of course everyone up until about 11th, 10th place I want to say, has already pitted. So yeah, just not really looking like it's worked out well for the moment. We'll have to see. Let's see who is able to extend, but I feel like extending much further than this will cause them to lose even more time overall. We'll have to see who takes a trip to the pits. Is it going to be Tao Piz? Is it going to be Harm? Tao Piz stays out. Harm stays out. Dowdek stays out. Chiquito stays out. Of course, Harm and Chiquito both in this top group here, so one of them will have to wait an extra lap to pit, because their teammate will, you would imagine, get the preferential treatment for pit stops. But Chiquito trying to go for the move around the outside of Dowdek there. Dowdek tries to defend by going for the move up the inside of Harm, and it's not quite worked out for Dowdek there. He's going to lose the position with quite an aggressive turn in there. He just turns straight into Chiquito, but Chiquito gets the position nonetheless, and Dowdek moves down to 4th place. We have a 2-3 now for Red Bull. And just watching the gaps, Jonah with a 3-second time penalty. Track limits, of course. Quite strange to see it so early on, especially with that safety car, a track like Hungary, but I'd imagine it's probably turn 4 where it's gone a bit wrong for him. That is the usual spot for the it's quite an easy error to make you go wide there or cut it a bit, get a warning. Same with turn 12 there. You just saw Dawidek go through a couple of corners and go. Fast right-hander, very easy just to slip a little bit wide of the line there and get yourself a warning. So just something to watch out for as Rally finally rejoins the session, but he's in last place, unfortunately for him, as Dresser pits then. So Dresser, the first of the soft tyre runners to blink, and he's going to go all the way back down to last place, even behind Rally here. But this will be the one and only stop he has to make in this race. He's going to go onto the hard tyre, and he's going to run that all the way to the end, you would imagine. Now let's watch the top guys. Are they maybe going to try a medium tyre? I don't know, seems unlikely, but they're losing time to Jonah at this point, all four of them. So the longer they leave it, the worse it's going to be for them overall, I think. You can already see Dress has come out 10 seconds behind Rally down in P16, so I don't really see the merit in staying out much longer as my intervals break, so I have no clue what the gaps are anymore. Unfortunately, we have yellows in Sector 1, and it's Dresser. Dresser has had an incident at turn 3, possibly due to the cold tyres. I'd imagine that was the reason. Hopefully it doesn't make another error into turn 4 as a result of overheated tyres, as you can imagine would happen after a spin, but it doesn't. Now let's see, is Tao Piz going to pit? He stays out, as does Harm, as does Chiquito and Dawidek. And Jonah already right on the tail of Dawidek, so that advantage that the soft tyres got from running the soft tyres completely disappeared now, and the hard and medium tyre runners have all caught up to the back of their train. So this is really the turning point in this race, you've got to imagine. And obviously a few guys here, Jonah, Tech, Brett and Joe, will all have to pit again. So maybe the soft tyre runners are just banking on holding their positions ahead of these guys, so that when they pit, they come out in front because of the undercut and hold the position ahead. But I feel like, with especially the tyre delta towards the end of the race, this might be a very difficult race for our lead four here, especially with Jonah looking so punchy right behind them. Look how close he's able to get, even through this S section, where you would imagine the dirty air would get the better of him. He's managing to stay about 2 tenths behind all the way through. As we see in the background, Bread actually going for a move on Tech, and Tech holding the outside line very well, getting the better momentum there. Maybe Bread's going to have to give up for now. There is a DRS zone coming up in a corner's time, of course, but he goes for the switchback on the exit of the penultimate corner. Runs a little bit wide through the final corner, but he will probably get a much better exit as a result. He's going to open his DRS. Tech not using his ERS to defend, as we have Harm and Dawidek into the pit. So first drivers to pink, Tao Piz and Chiquito staying on. And there it is, Bread up into P4 ahead of Tech there. And he's got 1.8 seconds to catch up to Jonah ahead. So he's going to have to try and get that done quickly if he has any hope of staying with that top group. Of course, now moving himself into what I guess is a net P2 maybe? It's kind of hard to tell, because you have the likes of Rudy and Polehouse who have managed to stay with this top group so far. But how much longer will their tyres hold on for? Also Salt has managed to stay with this top group, but then they have over a second to Jim, who has over a second to Jonas. So you've got to imagine those gaps will only start getting bigger as the race progresses, especially for these hard tyre runners who are going to be looking to do about 25, maybe more laps on these hard tyres. Probably a bit less, in fact. I'd imagine they'll probably try and go for about 22, like 23 to pit, as Tao Piz and Chiquito both finally pit. So they will fall down to the back of the order, possibly even behind Harm and Dawidek, who might have got a very nice undercut on them. That is yet to be seen. We'll watch where they come out on track in comparison to the guys they were fighting previously, as Rally comes through on both of them. Harm's going to get both of them, but is Dawidek going to get both of them? He's going to get one. It's going to be side by side between Dawidek and Tao Piz into turn 1, and it looks like Tao Piz just got ahead. Dawidek running wide off the track. This could put him under pressure from Chiquito. Chiquito going to have to pounce early if he wants to hold that position. He's going round the outside of turn 2. Looks like Dowdek just running his car a little bit wide. There's contact and Dowdek's into the wall. It's a huge crash. He's lost all of his front wing. There's a yellow flag in sector 1, but I don't think it's going to cause any kind of VSC or safety car as he is still in this race. But you've got to say that was probably Tao Piz's fault. It looks like he maybe lost the back end coming. Sorry, not Tao Piz, Chiquito's fault. It looks like he maybe lost the back end coming through the exit of turn 2, and that caused him to hit Dowdek and send him into the wall. Quite a dramatic spin there for the AlphaTauri driver. Now we have both AlphaTauris at the back, P15 and 16, and that's not really what you hope to see, as Jonah, of course, leading the way now with that penalty, but he is being hunted down by Bread. Bread with slightly better pace by the looks of it over the last couple of laps. He's slightly brought that gap down by a couple of tenths, so this could be a fight that we see all the way to the finish, as they have now broken the 1 second gap to Tech. So even if that group of Tech, Joe, Rudy, Polhouse and Salt and Jim and Jonas all carries on together, you've got to expect that gap to only get bigger and bigger as time goes on, giving these hard tyre runners that are on the hards from the start the advantage over especially Tech and Joe, who will have to pit off that medium tyre soon enough onto the hards. Dowdek does now retire in the pit lane, so he has decided that that crash has ended his race effectively. As we're going to look a little bit further down the order, Rudy going to start trying to really use these hard tyres, as he's keeping within half a second of Joe now. Joe, of course, on much more worn medium rubber, and really I think it's going to all pin on how can Rudy get through these next couple of cars, will completely define the rest of his race, because we're in for a long stint here. I don't think anyone's looking to pit particularly soon, except maybe Joe and Tech, maybe Rally, maybe Salt. Within the next 5 to 8 laps they might decide to come in, but that remains to be seen really. I mean, even then, it's not exactly a short period of time for nothing to happen in the middle of this race. Jonah getting himself a second 3-second time penalty. He is absolutely pushing. It doesn't look like it's working out for him at all. It looks like maybe a small mistake there for the Haas driver, as Bread closes up 3 tenths as they come out of turn 5. So maybe he got a penalty at turn 4 and compromised his run through turn 5. It'd be quite unfortunate if that was the case, but you see Lock up there. He is really trying to push as hard as he can, making sure that the McLaren behind doesn't get that DRS as they come through the detection point. There is the detection line. Is it close enough? It just about is. 9 tenths the gap as they come through the detection point. DRS open on the McLaren, and he has 5.5 seconds back to Tech and Joe in P3 and 4. So it's really becoming a one-on-one fight for what is the lead of the alternate strategy runners in this race. And I would still watch out for the likes of Rudy and Polhouse, also Jim, Jonas, Stel Repass. These guys could very easily have to pit again if they get a puncture or something. The only guys who I'm fairly confident won't have to pit again are Harm, Tao Piz, Chiquito and Dresser. So they're really the key figures in this race as it stands, and their main competitors, you've got to say, probably these guys you can see here, Jonah and Bread, as outside chances in that top fight. They have I think the gap overall, if I just look quickly, is about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14, 15, 16. They have about 16 seconds back to Tao Piz. So obviously that gap will be coming down, you'd imagine, as these guys' tyres are about 10 laps older. But once they get onto the softer rubber, the medium tyre, you've got to imagine that the extra speed they'll have with that tyre delta will be huge, and they'll be able to really chase them down for the remaining last part of the race. We could be on for a very dramatic finish as Jonah loses the back end out of turn 1. Has lost him about a tenth there. Obviously not the worst place to lose a bit of time. You have a whole lap to build it back, because the only real overtaking opportunities into turn 1, turn 2, if you're brave, as Talpiz finally passes Rally for P12. Yeah, another look up there for Jonah, so maybe feeling the pressure a bit from behind. He has got those 2 penalties, so I don't think he has to worry too much overall, because he does of course have the advantage of being in front. He's more likely than not going to lose the position anyway due to those penalties if it stays this close through the whole race. So, oh, he has a huge mistake there, so maybe worrying about it way more than I think he would, and that is a very bad place to make that mistake. At the penultimate corner, really affects his run through the final corner, and now look how close Bread is as they come onto the back straight. Pit window opens for the medium tyre one-stop strategy. It's going to be Bread trying around the outside of turn 1. Very tight between the 2 drivers. Very respectful too, as overtake mode enabled for both drivers. Bread's going to have the inside for turn 2, braking late, and he's just going to get his car mostly ahead there and run a little bit wide as Jonah tries to stick his nose up the inside of turn 3. It's not going to work out for him. He wasn't enough alongside to really deserve that space, and definitely wasn't in a position where that was really an acceptable move. I think he was more likely than not going to get unlucky, touch a wheel there and turn himself round. So quite lucky that he only got away with losing the position, I think. So yeah, I mean, let's see what the McLaren driver is able to do now, as he's up into the lead for now with a fairly sizable gap over the next group of cars. P3 Joe being 5 seconds behind Jonah here. Jonah just outside of that window, so you would usually say that about half a second is a decent gap to have to a guy in front if you're at the front of a train. As Joe finally pits, so he'll probably pit for the hard tyres, try and go to the end now. Yeah, you usually say about half a second is the gap you want. It was about 7/10 as they came through the final corner, so not really close enough to threaten Bread. Did see Bread use a bit of his overtake mode. As we see, that is Salt there, spinning and resetting to track at the exit of turn 1. And if you looked at the minimap, any keen-eyed viewers looking at the minimap would definitely see that it was definitely a reset to track there. So I'm not sure what the rules are in ALR on that, but if he gets reported, he could be in big trouble there. As Polehouse and Rudy finally finding themselves at the front of that little train. Of course, their tyres about 2 laps fresher than the tyres of Bread and Jonah, so may be able to close up a bit over the next couple of laps. Let's see what they're able to do. 5.8 is the current gap between Rudy and Jonah. We'll have to watch, see how much it closes over the next couple of laps. Still staying at about 5.8 as we come through the final sector, so not looking like either driver has a huge advantage through this part of the track at least. But you've got to expect those tyres to come into play at somewhere on track. Of course, Jonah with enough penalties to currently put him behind Rudy as it stands, as Talpiz up into P9 now, so really starting to get a charge on, see where he can try and end up. He's about 12, 13, maybe a little bit more seconds behind the lead as it stands. Let's just count this. It's about 6.5, 7.2, 7.9, 7.4, no, sorry, 8.4, 12.1, 14.4. He's about 15 seconds behind the lead then at the moment, Talpiz. So not a huge gain on where we saw him before, but that's really to be expected here. A track like this is Jim running massively wide through the middle sector there. Fortunately not losing too much time, just about hanging on to the edge of DRS there on Polehouse ahead, so he's not lost too much. But it is going to be interesting to see what happens with these current drivers. Bread pits. So Bread pits from the lead of this race here on lap 19. He's going to go for an undercut. And you've got to imagine he's going to go onto the mediums, try and take the mediums about 25, well, 17 laps. So he's got 19 laps on a set of hards. He's going to try and go 17 on a set of mediums. It's going to come out the pits. It's going to be just behind Chiquito then, but ahead of Rally. So that has worked out beautifully for him as he feeds out into a very nice clean bit of space. Maybe enough space there for him to go grab the fastest lap while he catches up to the back of that train. And as you know, that group of Harm, Talpiz and Chiquito, 7, 8 and 9, currently the podium in this race. So if he can catch up to that group, yeah, he can really do some damage and find himself on the podium, which would be amazing considering he started last in this race. Just watching now as we see Jonah come towards the end of the lap. Is Jonah going to follow him in, or is Jonah going to go a bit longer? Jonah is going to follow him in, so Jonah into the pits, and he is going to be a lot closer to Rally, you think, but I think he should be about safe. Maybe going to find himself just outside of DRS range on Bread due to the one extra lap that Bread had on the softer tyres, but you've got to imagine they'll still be fairly close when he comes back out on track. There it is. Of course, the Haas garage quite far down the pit straight to see as he exits the pits what's the delta going to be to get to the end of the pit line. He is well ahead of Rally, but he has found himself outside of DRS and Bread, 2.2 seconds behind us. Bread really making inroads on our net podium here. Of course, you have Stel Repass, Jonas, Jim, Polhouse and Rudy, all 17 laps in their current hard tyres. As we saw, Bread and Jonah only went 19, 20 laps on theirs, so it's going to be a big ask to get these hard tyres to the end, I think. Certainly, considering these guys have all been in one long train, getting their tyres a bit ruined in dirty air. So definitely something to keep an eye on, but something else to keep an eye on. Bread already inside of that 1 second gap to Chiquito, so it is currently a checkerboard of Red Bull, McLaren, Red Bull, McLaren, and that is huge, as he would actually look like a move could be on as they come through the final corner. He's just about half a second behind, so we said before half a second's a nice gap to have. I don't think it's really going to be on this time around, as both drivers have DRS, but maybe if he uses enough of his ERS, it doesn't look like he wants to use too much. He doesn't have a whole lot to begin with, as he nearly runs into the back of Chiquito there. So just the amount of confidence he has on those medium tyres compared to the slightly used hards in front. I think those hards probably coming towards about halfway through their lifespan compared to those fresh medium tyres. So really an interesting race coming at the moment, as we saw how much he was gaining every lap. As Chiquito gets himself a penalty there for running wide at turn 4. See how much Bread was gaining every lap, though, that the pace differential here is quite large, and that usually indicates that a move could be on sooner rather than later. Bread just dipping a wheel into the grass there, trying to use the maximum amount of entry curve. And what this getting held up behind Chiquito is doing is it's allowing Jonah just to slightly creep towards this group here. Of course, you'd expect that. Jonah also on the fresh medium tyres, very fast driver, but maybe not quite making the progress he'd have hoped. He's made a few tenths on this lap, but he really would need to make this move soon. Looking at how close Bread is coming through the final corner, he's already about 2 tenths closer than he was before, and the exit only 2 tenths behind. So definitely a move on into turn 1. Doesn't go for the inside there. Chiquito has that nicely covered off. Bread trying for the outside. He's going to run out of room here, though, as Chiquito just breaks late enough to make the defence work. Is Bread going to charge down the inside? He's going to try. There's a big lock up there. Contact as the horrible camera angle comes in. And, that was quite aggressive chop across there from Chiquito, but Bread still unable to find a way through, as Harm and Talpiz now catching up to their next target, which is Stel Repass. Unfortunately for Stel Repass, he's going to be a bit of a sitting duck on those older tyres. Is Bread going to go for the move into the hairpin, the chicane? He's not. Had a little look, decided better of it. Definitely the correct choice. Would not think that a move into there would go particularly well, but you can see he's all over the back of that Red Bull, all over the gearbox. You can see how much more pace he has. He's just so... He's like almost making avoiding action midway through the corner. He's just closing up so much on the brakes and into the turning point, but he does now have to worry a bit about Jonah behind. I don't think Jonah's going to be a huge threat as it is. You see the confidence in the brakes there from the McLaren, and you've got to imagine it will be pretty much the same thing for the Haas in a bit, but you can just see how much being in that DRS train really causes struggles. Tao Piz tries on the outside of Harm, so these two not working together anymore. Harm keeping the position. Tao Piz maybe going for the inside into turn 2. He's going to go for a big lunge. They make contact, but I don't think it's particularly heavy as they come into turn 3 now, still side by side, and still side by side on the climb up towards turn 4. They're going to have to sort it out by turn 4. Turn 4's not a corner to go side by side at, and in fact Harm goes for the switchback. He's going to go for the outside of turn 5 now, but he doesn't really have the traction to go through there. Now comes under pressure from Chiquito as Jonah is ahead of Bread, so I think something's gone on there. Bread does have some end plate damage, so maybe contact with Chiquito has caused him to lose that, and that really has hurt his chances of getting on the podium in this race, you've got to say. But now Jonah once again all over the back of Chiquito, maybe going for a move around the outside in the final sector. Didn't quite work out for him, but he does now have the inside, but he makes contact there with Chiquito. Kind of forceful from him to send it up the inside of Chiquito there, but I think overall neither driver will be complaining too much now, as Jonah trying to close up a bit, as Bread, I looked like he had damage. It doesn't. It's just the weird colouring of the end plates on the McLaren, the black on the inside, making it kind of hard to see against the black tarmac. But he is now going for that move on Chiquito, and it's going to get quite close as they come through turn 2. Chiquito with a huge lunge there. Is it going to be the switchback from Bread? It's not quite. It looks like just didn't have the room to turn in. Chiquito parking it not quite on the apex, but right in where Bread wanted to cross the line. And Chiquito, Jonah and Harm all now with penalties. So it's looking like keeping it clean is going to be the key here, as Tao Piz already starting to pull a gap. He's not quite outside of the 1 second. He is now outside of the 1 second on Stell repasses. Harm really getting caught behind the the Racing Point, but he does have the Haas of Jonah all over the back of him. Jonah, just as we said with Bread before, almost moving across the apex of a corner to try and not make contact. He's now going to try it around the outside of the penultimate corner. Once again, not really sure this is the best place to make it, as he will have to go the long way around. He does still have the inside now for the final corner, which he didn't quite get before. This is going to be a much better run than he had when we saw before. He is up into P7 for now. Can he hold it? It looks like he can, using all of his ERS that he had left there to keep the position, but he's now under pressure from the Red Bull once again around the outside. We have yellow flags. It's for Jonas. Jonas spun on the inside of turn 1, that really preventing any overtakes from going off course. Can't overtake under yellow flags, so yeah, not really working out. But all this fighting really letting Tao Piz get a gap, as Jonah, of course, now ahead of Harm, is the next one to try it and get past Stell Repas. Stell Repas holding on for dear life, as he has that 22 lap old set of hards on his car. They are really dead. I mean, we saw before cars pitting lap 19 and 20 to get rid of their hards, and now we have up the inside Harm on Jonah, and Harm is spun, and so is the other Red Bull. The two Red Bulls are collided and they're round Chiquito and Harm. I think Harm spun because of his contact with Jonah, and then Chiquito just ran into the back of him and spun on his own. It was very weird physics and very unlucky for both Red Bull drivers, but huge drama there as they run into each other and both lose positions. Chiquito now down to P13, Harm just about inside the top 10, P9 there, and this frees up a bit of space for Jonah, I'd say, to make the move on the Stell repass into turn 1. Tao Piz already past Jim, really running away with this at the moment. Jim actually very slow there, so everyone getting past Jim. And I wonder what happened there. He made quite an aggressive move across the track. I'm not sure many of the drivers will be too happy with that one. Stell repass getting pushed, just running out of room there on the outside of turn 1. And finally, Jonah is through and able to hunt down Tao Piz. Crazy stuff going on here. We still have 10 laps to go, so it still could change as Rally puts on a set of softs. You've got to imagine Rudy now maybe starting to think that the one stop's possible if he just preserves his tyres, can get them through the next 10 laps. It's going to be a big ask, but if he can get it done, it will be a big help. And now we have Chiquito leaving the session. He went into the pits and left the session, so I think he meant to retire, but he quite often doesn't retire. But he has also had internet problems in the past, so it might be his internet. I don't know. Either way, no longer in the session, and considering the incident he just had, I think most of us can put two together to say that he's probably rage quit there. As now we have Bread finally getting his chance to clear the racing point of Stel Repass here. He gets through, and it looks like it's going to be a fairly simple move before they even get to the braking zone. He can take the racing line and up into P5 for Bread. Only Jonah and Polehouse, who has very old hards on, has now been passed by Tal Piz. So Tal Piz on an absolute mad charge here, trying to get back to the lead of this race, as Polehouse is now starting to struggle on those very old hard tyres. Maybe going to choose this opportunity to pit, given the fact that he's starting to lose positions already. Maybe not. I think if he pitted now, he'd find himself outside the top 10 probably. Actually, he might just about get away in 10th place if he pit now and strap on a set of softs. Probably not softs. Maybe he'll try and go a few more laps and try the softs to the end. As it is probably better than putting on a set of mediums for what is 8 laps. But we'll see. He does continue on this lap, so not looking like he wants to pit at the moment. Jonah just about getting inside the DRS range though of the Ferrari, and Bread setting the fastest lap of the race, confirming to us that that fight between him and Jonah is truly still on. And if he can close that gap back to the Haas driver anytime soon, we could have a real good fight on our hands for what is the back end of the podium here between Polehouse, Jonah and Bread. And just keep an eye on the gap. Tal Piz closing about a second a lap on our leader Rudy here. So might be time for Rudy to pull the gun, try and come out in about 6th place on a fresh set of tyres if he doesn't think he can defend his position, which I doubt he can. The mediums, or well, Tal Piz's hards actually. I say that Tal Piz's hards probably not in the best condition either. You've got to imagine, but I don't know. Maybe Rudy's going to start banking on the fact that they're both on bad tyres. Obviously Rudy will be on worse tyres by about 9 laps, but maybe he's going to start banking on the fact that they're both on bad tyres to help hold his position. I feel like if they go that route, Jonah might become a huge threat to them in this race. He's actually Bread already back inside the DRS range of Jonah, so oh, there's a very late move there from Polehouse. Just about fair, I'd say, but definitely late as he tries to hold it up the inside. He's going to run out a bit of room though, so he runs into the side of Jonah, and that's going to lose him momentum down into turn 2, but he's still going to try and fight it. Going to have to give up the position into turn 2 though, as he was very clearly not going to get it to work there. As Jim is spun there, so lap 29 and Jim with an issue at turn 1. I don't think he's got a puncture. I was looking to see maybe he had a puncture on those old hard tyres, but it doesn't quite look like that. So no need to worry yet, as we now have Bread in front of Jonah and Polehouse in front of Bread. What the hell has gone on there, as Harm has retired from this race in the pits after speeding into the pit lane. So what's gone on between these three to have Jonah fall behind both Polehouse and Bread? Maybe just a mistake from Jonah, maybe something aggressive there from Polehouse, but either way, has shuffled the order round once again, and Tal Piz continuing to close in on Rudy at the front there. So many different battles going on at once. About 5 seconds between Tal Piz and Polehouse here, with 5 or so laps to go. There's just a big spin there from Jonah. He's in the wall, and he got front wing damage. That is really his race over, as Bread moves past Polehouse fairly nicely into turn 1, and now has the next 6 or so laps to close down the just under 5 second gap to Tal Piz, who is also struggling behind Rudy. As we also have another car parked at turn 1. I think that is the Red Bull of Harm. So here it is, Rudy, Talpiz and Bread, your current podium. I think someone did predict that, so well done to whoever that was, but we still have 6 laps, well 5.5 laps to go, and a lot can happen in that time, of course, so we'll have to see if any more drama occurs. But right now it's been a pretty eventful race, much better than last season's wet race we had in Hungary. I mean, a track where you can barely overtake, and in the rain, which makes it harder to overtake, you can kind of expect a boring race. But here in the dry, Hungary has not disappointed. With all the complaints of difficulty to overtake, it has not seemed so difficult for these guys, at least, to make a good move here or there. It's not been easy, which I think is right. I think if it's difficult to make a pass, but it's not too hard, it's definitely not easy to make a pass, I think that's just about right. Don't want it to be too easy to make your overtakes. Makes the racing boring in its own right, where you just know they're going to get past. There's not really any point in getting excited over it. But in a situation like this, where it's difficult to get past, they might not definitely get past, but they could still get past if they tried, especially if they have a tyre difference. I think create some quite exciting racing. I think we've seen that here in Hungary today, so definitely nice to see. We're going to just come a little bit further back down the order to the 2 Renaults here, who are fighting over P8 and 9. Jim ahead in P7, just about hanging on to his DRS at the moment. Here is Tech on 14-lap younger hard tyres, so you would imagine that he had the pace in this situation. Joe with a lap younger than his teammate Tech, so if he catches up, maybe a bit of team orders to help gain the team a bit more points, but I don't think either driver really wants that right now, as they're both closing in on the car ahead. And so I think they'll be fairly happy as it is to try and both get past this Mercedes with the remaining time in this race. But maybe if it gets down to crunch time, it would be worth letting Joe through and seeing what he is able to do on the Mercedes. But definitely not looking like that's the case right now. As I say, Tech really closing in on Jim, so I think these guys could both get past Jim anyway with the remaining part of this race. Now we have it. Tech is going to go to the inside, running all the way onto the grass on the inside there. Oh, there's a contact between him and Jim, just about keeping it going in the right direction. Crazy stuff there from Tech. Gets through on the inside, a bit of curb, bit of grass, as Jim with a huge dive down the inside. Don't know what he expected there, but he's round, and that allows Joe through, so there you go. Bit quicker than I expected, but both Renault drivers through on the Mercedes, P7 and 8. And oh, there's a huge slide there from Tech, and that could put him under pressure from his teammate a bit. Probably not into the chicane, but you never know, weirder things have happened. No, they hold formation for now, as we've had an issue for Jonas at turn 1. But yeah, I don't know what Jim was thinking there. He just braked way too late, straight into the side of that Renault and spun himself round. So really completely his own fault, I'd say. And yeah, nice move from Tech. He went all the way onto the grass after selling the dummy for the overtake, and not only did it look showy, but he made it work. So congrats to him, up into P7, but he is now under pressure a bit from Joe. Joe opening that flap. He's about 4.3 behind. Is it going to be close enough by the time they get to turn 1? Probably not. Doesn't look like it will, but of course he'll have a second chance as they come out of turn 1. Open the DRS once again. Come down towards turn 2. Again, not quite close enough, but definitely looking like the faster of the 2 Renaults right now, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him passed before the end of this race. I'm just watching the gaps out front. Talpiz now right on the edge of that 1 second to Rudy. Really coming down to the wire here, and you've got to say it's quite impressive how long Rudy's taken these tyres, but he is now probably starting to feel the pressure from Talpiz behind. As I said, I would have probably, if I was one of these guys, tried the 2-stop, because as you saw, it was quite crazy for the likes of Bread and Jonah, who did end up on that medium tyre, but if it was a little bit less crazy, I think overall might have been the better choice over the one stop. But as we know, in ALR you do tend to have quite a bit of trouble getting past cars. They do like their hard defending, which isn't a bad thing, of course. You're entitled to defend your position, and that sometimes means that the extra stop just isn't worth it. I think that's what we're seeing once again here today, as Talp is now within half a second of Rudy. This could get very tasty as we come on to the final sector before the final lap. And it's just, as you can see there, Bread 3 seconds back. I mean, what number of things could have happened today for him just to be 3 seconds closer at this point in time, but unfortunately it just wasn't to be for the McLaren driver, but his teammate now with a huge chance as they come onto the back straight to get that win in this race. He's going to have to fight for it. Rudy going very defensive to the inside, showing his choice early on as he holds the inside now. He's going to run Talpiz out onto the curb. It's going to hurt Talpiz's momentum a little bit. Of course, the DRS will help. He's going to go for the send into turn 2. And they've touched, and Talpiz is round. Talpiz has spun after what was a fairly questionable incident. But I think if that one went to the stewards, they'd deem that Talpiz just wasn't far alongside enough, that it was Rudy's corner. Talpiz, of course, on the inside, but it's just kind of hard to tell. It would be the kind of thing you'd have to watch back and decide whether it was okay or not. But that has now swapped the positions to the McLarens and has also confirmed, as it is, Rudy's position in this race after the lap 1 stop behind the safety car onto the hard tyres. He is going to come through the penultimate corner now. Only one corner to go. He's losing time all the time, but it's not quite enough to matter to him. One more lap and maybe a different story, but he will cross the line to win the Hungarian Grand Prix here in ALR. P2 is going to be Bread after starting last. What a performance from him, and Talp is going to come home in third. After that dramatic last lap incident, Polehouse, 4th place, very solid drive from him. And now we see the drivers of penalties. Dresser, very solid for him to get P5 here, but he's going to lose it to Stel Repass because of penalties. And Tech now going to cross the line to finish what will be P8 after penalties. Joe finally getting ahead of him. Jim, once again, going to cross the line P9, but he's going to have Rally close enough to take that position on penalties. No, he's not. Jim keeps it. So Jim P9, Rally P10, and Salt going to cross the line P11. Jonah, unfortunately, after that huge incident, P12 is all he's going to manage today, as he joins the big crash on the main straight. Not quite in as dramatic fashion as the other two did. But driver of the day, Bread, I'd say I probably got to agree with that. He started last and finished second. You don't do that accidentally. So yeah, and there is your podium sitters. You have Rudy, who I'm sure Talpiz will report to the stewards. It was a last lap incident, of course he would. And yeah, I mean that. So Rudy started P2, finished P1. Solid drive from him. Talpiz started P1, finished P3. And maybe you'll argue that Rudy had the better strategy overall. I don't think that's strictly true. I think both strategies, to pit under the safety car lap 1, to pit after the safety car, worked out about even overall. So I think either or was the better choice. I think maybe pitting under the safety car was riskier in terms of punctures. Of course, Brad P2, Polas P4, Stel Repass P5, Dresser P6, Joe P7, Tech P8, Jim P9, and Rally rounding out the top 10 with Salt, Jonah, Jonas, Chiquito rounding out the finishers, with Jonas having the fastest lap. But as I was saying, pitting lap 1 would be harder on the tyres. You'd be at more risk of a puncture, which you could obviously manage your tyres a bit to help reduce that risk. but ultimately it is a bit random around about the 75% mark. They're just kind of, Codemasters do just kind of go, well, you might get a puncture, you might not. Technically I think you can get a puncture anytime after 70%, but it's very low between 70 and 75, and then after 75 the chance dramatically increases to be quite high. So yeah, um, yeah, it's quite a risk in terms of punctures, but then again, by not pitting on the first lap and going after the safety car, I mean they only went like 4 laps or so after the safety car, you risk falling behind those who did pit under the safety car because you're not able to get that gap and the field doesn't spread out enough straight away. So yeah, I don't know. You just it's kind of hard to call. You take your risks, and in the end, they ended up about even. So I guess either or, depends what you're better at. Are you better at tyre life, or are you better at being fast? I think are really the things you need to weigh up there. You're good at overtaking as well if you choose the second strategy. But I think ultimately those who started outside the top 10 we saw got the biggest benefit, even with the safety car. I would say the safety car, I would say it maybe overall didn't help them out very much, because you got those people to get the free pit stop and get closer to them. Whereas if they were able to stay in that position behind them throughout the first stint, and then those guys yeah, I mean, they were just crazy, weren't they? The guys in the mediums at the end, the pace advantage they had, that made the overtaking look easy at a track where it just wasn't. Those who started on the mediums and went to the hards didn't quite get that much of a benefit, but they did get the fresher rubber towards the end. Kind of plays out the same way that those guys who didn't pit on lap 1 got. Obviously they extended their stints a bit because of the safety car. It's like really ruined the guys who started on the mediums race. But as we saw, starting on the hards, probably the best strategy today. They just run into a bit of trouble with some pretty crazy battling, which cost them time overall. So yeah, I think all the strategies today ended up in about the same place, including all the battling. Of course, you've got to account for the fact that you're going to have to battle and overtake. It's part of racing. So yeah, I think overall they all ended up in about the same place, and that was just a straight up race of who was faster in the end. Obviously we had a few incidents ruin that dynamic a bit, but I don't think you can deny that the fastest guys ended up at the top regardless of where they started, with the exceptions of a few who came into incidents. But again, it's all part of racing, so it is what it is. But just going to check the other streams, see if they're still going for you guys. We have Tier 4, which have finished, and Tier 2, which have finished with the last ones again this week. So unfortunately nowhere to send you guys, but thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed this race. I enjoyed it quite a lot. It was a lot of fun to watch, commentate. So I hope you want to join us back next week. I'm just going to check. I think next week's race is going to be in Austria. So Austria, a track a bit more known for its overtaking than Hungary. Also known for its DRS trains and dive bombs. So if you're at all if you're at all interested in watching more of this league, you enjoyed what you saw this week, you want to see Austria, by all means tune in same time next week. Of course, tier 2 and 4 also running at the same time. As for tiers 3, 5 and 6, they run on a Sunday at 8 PM UK time, so of course check those out if you wish, and we have the Sprint League running at a Tuesday, 8 p.m. UK time again. So yeah, make sure to check that out. Sprint League, definitely very interesting this season with the whole realistic cars, but the fastest guys and the slowest guys and the fastest cars dynamic we got going on, and pretty spicy championship so far with fairly unpredictable results. So of course, check that one out. That's going to be all for me today. So again, hope you all enjoyed the stream and have a good evening. Goodbye.